I need to watch the whole thing. What is that? That will play the game.
This is the biggest prison in the world, designed to hold up to 40,000 inmates. It's a brand new high-security fortress. The inmates are under constant observation, inside and outside. Up to 100 prisoners live in cramped-up cells, with no privacy. There's no going out, no fresh air, and no visits. This prison is located in El Salvador. For decades, the country has been terrorized by so-called maras, competing street gangs. It was notoriously one of the world's most dangerous places. Its murder rate has long been the highest on the globe. Then, its people elected a new president. Nayib Bukele went to war against the country's gangs. His government imprisoned 2% of the country's adult population. Many here, never to see their families again, never to be released back into society.
Jesus.
El Salvador is much safer now, in some ways. Bukele is immensely popular as a result, but up to 1 in 3 prisoners is said to be innocent, and El Salvador might have accidentally sacrificed its democracy in its fight against the maras.
Interesting.
This is Juan, a fictional character we base on real reports and material from the Megaprison. He is 15 years old, tattooed, his parents are very poor, and abandoned him when he was 9. Then he joined the Barrio 18, a major Mara gang. Now Juan is on a prisoner transport to the southeast with other suspected gang members. Three years earlier, Nayib Bukele became president of El Salvador. He's much younger than your average politician. He knows how to use social media and quickly rose to power. Fighting the maras dominated his political career. The gangs have their origins in U.S. cities like Los Angeles. After the young migrants were deported in the early 90s, they took control of the streets back in Central America. They've been terrorizing El Salvador for decades. Extortion, arms trafficking, and drug dealing. Maras rule entire communities and districts. They often recruit orphans and leave children in poverty with no choice. Join or die. During gang wars, innocent bystanders are often caught between the fronts on the street. The maras have attacked and set fire to buses on several occasions, even with innocent civilians inside them. In 2015, 18 people were murdered every day. El Salvador has a population of over just 6 million, which equated to over 100 murders per 100,000 inhabitants. A sad global record. As mayor of the capital, San Salvador, Bukele used mild means to fight this violence. Youth centers, streetlights, infrastructure, and education helped. Many voters like that. Now as president, he's changing his strategy. He wants to rule with an iron fist. At the beginning of his first term in office, the murder rate in El Salvador actually falls. But it also fell before that, and there are considerable doubts as to whether this was really due to his security politics. Also, Bukele is said to cooperate with the gangs. The maras are supposed to keep a low profile and reduce the murder rate. In exchange, Bukele promises benefits for imprisoned gang members. The gangs seem to have agreed and the violence decreases. Bukele denies any such deal has been made. Either way, in 2021, the population rewards Bukele and his party with a majority in parliament, and with more power.
So I think these things are extremely
On the
complicated.
22nd of March, 2022, the government under Bukele declares a state of emergency. The reason is a wave of murders by the maras. 10 days earlier, over 60 people fell victim.
I think the video's trying its best to do like a speed run of like the history of it, but like I was thinking the state of everything at the same time and like how it works and really like the reality of it is very difficult. You're not going
to the brutal gangs.
It goes deeper than just like
it seems like they stepped down
to deal with these guys or whatever
deal they had with Bukele. The state of emergency restricts freedom of assembly and freedom of the press. Anyone can be detained for 15 days without a warrant. The police had to meet strict arrest quotas. During the 15 days in police custody, it is decided whether somebody will remain in custody for up to 2 years as pretrial detention. Because of the 15 days of custody and thousands of arrested people, mass trials often decide on this pretrial detention. The judges decide the fate of up to 900 people at a time.
What?
Sometimes the judges are masked and remain anonymous, Anyone who ends up in pretrial detention usually spends more than a year in prison. The country's prisons became completely overcrowded. Some host 3 times the amount of prisoners they were built for. The conditions are brutal. Guards torture and most likely sometimes kill inmates. In the first year of the state of emergency alone, there are over 150 deaths in the prisons. Dead bodies are reportedly disposed of in mass graves, relatives not informed of the deaths. We aim to make tough subjects such as this one accessible. Space for wanna go deep/udu. This new mega-predicted gang members. This new mega-prison is built in 2023. Gang members have officially been classified as terrorists since 2015. Accordingly, the prison is called Center for the Confinement of Terrorism, or CECOT for short. Kwan arrives there now. After a good hour, the bus reaches a massive complex, surrounded by a 2-kilometer long and 11-meter high wall. It is supposed to be able to withstand car bombs. Hundreds of soldiers from the surrounding barracks can be called up to CECOT within minutes. After the gate opens, Juan drives past high fences, watchtowers, and huge halls. The bus comes to a halt again in front of one of them. Juan has to hand over all his possessions and get x-rayed. He is given a white t-shirt and trousers. His head gets shaved. Then Juan is taken to his cell. He shares it with around 90 other prisoners.
Jesus
This
Christ.
4-story metal shelf is his only place to sit. He can use his towel as a pillow. He has to sleep on it at night, if he can. The light in the hall is on 24/7, and it is always bright as day. Juan quickly loses all sense of time. There are no windows. He can't look outside, let alone go outside. In contrast to many other prisons, there is simply no outdoor area for inmates. Escape is utterly impossible. The complex is protected by 7 security rings. From the cells to high electric fences, 19 watchtowers, and several walls, there is gravel on the paths so that no one can move around unnoticed. Some inmates can speak to their lawyers,
Jesus.
but only by video call. There is a special room just for that. Juan only leaves his cell to work in the workshop every day, or to take part in mandatory joint sports sessions in the middle of the hall, always under strict surveillance by security guards armed to the teeth. They watch the prisoners from every angle. There is no privacy. Juan shares 2 large wash basins and toilets with his cellmates. The gym and canteen are only for prison employees. Prisoners eat in their cells. So it's a real highlight when Mexican YouTuber Luisito Comunica comes by with his camera crew. Similarly, when Lethal Crisis gets to film there. You can find both videos in our description. They have English subtitles. Some inmates may try to send a message to the outside world while being filmed. Anyone who's caught doing that or causes disturbance is put in a solitary cell.
I'm not watching it for
These are
many
concrete
reasons.
bunkers with a water basin, a toilet, a simple concrete bench. There is no lighting in these cells. It is pitch black. Many prisoners will spend the rest of their lives in these conditions. Prison sentences in CECOT are set to last from 20 to over 1,000 years. The
It's
inmates are
not
cut
about
off
being
from the
a
outside
chicken, it's
world,
not TOS
their
related,
families
but-
and friends. There are no phone calls to CECOT and no visits. Some will never see their loved ones again. Juan is expected to be released from CECOT after 15 years. That is the maximum sentence for 15-year-olds. 16 and 17-year-olds can serve up to 30 years. What plans are there for him when he gets out of prison? None. Rehabilitation is not planned. Human rights groups such as Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, and Christos Sol criticize CECOT harshly. Experts cast doubt if the clampdown can solve the country's problem.
It's easy for the people to point the finger and criticize and do whatever when they're not the one dealing with the problem and their country isn't falling apart because of the problem. Everybody is always first to be nice and be the guys. Let's not do this, guys. Let's not do this. When their country is like on some fucking ivory tower type shit. Shut up, dumb fucker.
Long term.
Containing people is a fairly good temporary solution. It's something that can happen fairly quickly with not a ton of money, and it's an investment to really expand rehabilitation programs and to look at preventative strategies.
Ashley Battistini is a professor at Swinburne University of Technology in Melbourne. She works primarily on new intervention strategies for high-risk populations. According to her, CECOT only treats the symptoms of violence. Sooner or later, the violence could return in the same way, or worse.
If you treat people like trash, you're really going to get trash behavior in return. People are not motivated to change.
In return? Oh, lady.
When they are treated poorly and when they're not given opportunities to grow and develop.
In return from what?
Even though, again, it's doing what it's intended to do by containing this behavior.
They're living in a cage.
Individuals off the streets, and you're seeing reductions in crime as a result of it. In the long term, it's really not going to be of benefit to society or to these individuals to simply contain them without any goal of changing what is keeping them in that criminal lifestyle.
Things are completely different at the other end of the world.
I knew that.
In Norway,
I knew they were gonna say this. I almost said it. You guys are approaching this from like some fucking like European like oh, here are jails. We have a Wi-Fi, Xboxes, PS4s, fucking high-speed internet, and you get to do jobs, gardening, and choose your path and go to college. Brother, like, you cannot compare. You just can't.
In Norway, there are prisons without cells. Murderers and rapists live in residential groups. The few guards are unarmed, probably something unimaginable for a lot of our viewers. But Norway has the lowest recidivism rate in the world.
You know, their whole mindset and philosophy is about change and about rehabilitation. And the idea of imprisonment itself is the punishment. There's no intention to further punish people beyond the incarceration itself. And so...
Yeah, but how do you do this with a high density, high population of inmates and have a high density of high level violent crimes? Like, dude.
They are treated as human beings with the goal.
You act like this zone, this like house is like only killers. Like, oh yeah, these guys are killers. Brother, there might be like, it's not at like a high density. Yeah, there's a bunch of people in there that it's a big mix, whatever. In some of these things, it's higher density and higher violence. Like, brother, you're comparing like something completely different.
Of, you know, re-entry.
It's not
that those
comparable.
individuals are eventually going to come back into the communities. And so I think first and foremost, it requires a mindset and a philosophy that people are capable of change, and that's a major goal of the corrective process.
But how should gang
build
violence...
more facilities, bro. They don't even have the funds to fight the fucking crime. They don't have the funds, but they have to make deals with the fucking cartels and shit like that, right? In order to have any maneuverability. And you think they're gonna fucking make a bunch of shit and a bunch of sofas and nice places and high-speed internet fucking prisons for everybody? Brother, like, there's like some sort of priority here, brother. Like, what the...
be combated.
Like, is this like a first world view on some of these countries that they have the luxury to do all that? They don't. You're crazy.
Also going to need thought around preventative strategies and policy changes that, again, are causing people to go down this pathway in the first place. So, you know, it's worth taking a look at what's going on in communities, with the economy. You know, what is it that is driving people to enter these gangs and to keep these gangs so active and involved in the first place?
According to Socorro Jurídico Humanitario, almost 1/3 of all prisoners in El Salvador...
It starts at the very fucking top. It starts all the way at the government. When your entire structure, government structure, is laced with fucking corruption and shit, and it's laced with the gangs, with the whatever, and it's all together, brother, your system is designed for failure from the get-go. People spawn in, and it's already failed. Like, you can't fix the fucking... like the symptoms and the outer branches of everything when the whole thing is a complete dog shit.
Or most likely
oh my
innocent.
God, dude.
Many were imprisoned based on a mass trial in front of a masked judge after they were arrested without a warrant. The government is aware that thousands of innocent people are in prison. The government claims that 8,000 people have already been released. About twice as many innocent people are likely still detained. Police had explicit orders to make arrests, no matter who they were really arresting.
Porque hemos metido gente sin haber cometido ningún delito, sino que hay muchos casos solo por el simple hecho de ser jóvenes. Las patrullas tenían que detener cierta cantidad de gente diaria para que la suma de detenidos fuera aumentando, ¿va? Y así decir de que si no deteníamos a 20 personas, no podíamos regresar a la base. O sea, y allí fue que allí agarrábamos a cualquiera que hallábamos en la calle, ¿verdad?
Poverty is a big factor that drives people into the arms of the gangs. During Bukele's last term of office, extreme poverty in El Salvador has doubled. At the same time, poor people were particularly affected by the wave of arrests. They are often unable to afford legal assistance. Nonetheless, many people of El Salvador view all of this as an incredible success story for Bukele. Over 70,000 arrests since the beginning of the state of emergency.
Because the people, the citizens that get the bonuses of that, right? All they see is the good, and they don't feel the bad. And the reality is, the population will never care about the bad. They pretend to care, whatever the fuck. They'll say whatever. But the people that have the benefits give zero fucks. That if there was one guy who wasn't really linked to this, he's gonna get a bad trial, he's still gonna live in prison. They don't give a fuck if they got 20 actual gang members in jail. They don't give a fuck.
Beginning of the state of emergency.
They're tired of this fucking shit. They're tired of bloodshed. They're tired of it.
Historically low murder rate. According to the government, just under 500 murders in 2022 and only 154 murders in 2023. El Salvador went from one of the most violent countries in the world to one of the safest in Latin America. So Bukele was re-elected as president in February of this year by a huge margin. The constitution did not actually allow him to be re-elected, so he had it changed. Just one of many erosions of El Salvador's democracy. Already in 2020, he had marched into parliament with armed soldiers to influence a vote. Freedom of expression, freedom of assembly, and freedom of the press have been restricted for over 2 consecutive years now. While reading up on this topic, we found this quote in The Guardian. Bukele is highly undemocratic, highly abusive, and highly popular. For some, it's hard to accept that these 3 things can coexist. Bukele jokingly called himself the world's coolest dictator on Twitter a few years back. Doesn't seem so funny now.